Greetings. Welcome back to the Cape Lead Revolution with yet another edition of Leaders with Leaders. Enjoying some wonderful Kona Brewery, Big Wave beer. More about that in a minute. But my first guest, or my guest here today, is Captain Katie Voirol. Captain Voirol is the flight commander for the military personnel flight at the 633rd Force Support Squadron here at Joint Base Langley, Eustis. And Captain Voirol, thank you very much for being here.
Of course.
So cheers. We'll get this rocking. So, a little bit about our history.
Yes.
Right? So 8 years ago already. And now it's coming up on, so I'm seeing in Facebook all the fake Patty's Day stuff.
Oh, I know.
So all those.
Some of those came up on Time Hop today.
Oh. So if you've ever been to Manhattan, Kansas at Fort Riley, they do, the week before St. Patrick's Day, they do a fake Patty's Day before the kids the college students are out at spring break, and it's a good St. Patrick's Day fest. And
Yeah.
those were good times. But at the time, I had the privilege of being the captain's good teammate when she was Staff Sergeant Voirol, who then our squadron stepped to Tech Sergeant Voirol, who just a couple months later then got picked up for OTS.
Yeah, it was a whirlwind.
It was a whirlwind. So you got picked up, you went to OTS, I PCS to Hawaii, and lo and behold, your first assignment ended up being Hawaii as well.
Yeah, I remember when I got the passcode, and I was like, what is this? It doesn't say. And then we looked at it, and we're like, that's the same passcode.
We're working headquarters back out together. Yahtzee. So, in the 8 years that have followed, you become a huge family member to us. So Allie loves you. You're there like right there when Renan was born. So you watched my sons grow and do all that fun stuff. You hold the distinction of being the very last person to re-enlist me. And so that is great. And it was at the Kona Brewery down in Hawaii Kai in the southern part of Oahu at the Kona Brewery. Just enjoying some beers, gorgeous place to re-enlist out there, and so that's a huge honor. So the fact that I get to interview you now is pretty awesome for me. So let's kind of get into this a little bit. So I'm just going to ask you some questions, and so I kind of want to get your perspective. I've been kind of shaking my contact tree so all my friends are getting ready to retire. I wanted to interview them. So a lot of the senior leaders throughout the Air Force, I wanted to hear their perspective, so a lot of people could see exactly what they, we'll have some beers, like I call it, a little bit of the truth lube, and so let them hear their perspective, so maybe we can bring truth to power, so that people can hear, how we want them to communicate with senior echelons. So this is kind of a unique perspective now, because you can kind of help funnel maybe some of those stories up. So I've been having them, speak from their perspective to tell people, hey, what's going on? Here's how we view communication. But now you can kind of give us like a ground truth, at a squadron level, at a base level of how these things apply. And it's funny because I've kind of joked for years that if you're on an Air Force base, the face of all hate is the Mission Support Group commander. And then inside the Mission Support Group, the face of all hate is the Force Support Squadron. And then inside the Force Support Squadron, it's going to be military personnel flight.
Yeah.
So you have the distinction of getting all base hatred as it funnels through, but only because you handle everything that affects families and lives and careers. So I mean,
it's passion.
Like,
people are passionate about their lives, their careers, what's happening.
What an amazing challenge.
Yeah.
So what do you like most about that job?
Oh, I love airmen. So first and foremost, that is my favorite. That's one of the reasons I commissioned. I wanted to lead airmen. And my airmen are fantastic. And I have about 23 or so that are all first termers. Some of them have been in less than a year, majority of them less than a year. But they take such pride in what they do every single day. And I challenge them to think outside the norms. And, when folks, one of the things I always say to my airmen is, when people come to us, they've already looked at the AFIs, they've already looked at MIPERS, they've looked at the guidance. They want a real SME answer.
Right.
Don't quote an AFI back to them. So go that extra step, push the boundaries, ask AFPC, challenge what you're hearing, because the AFI might not be right.
And that's a phenomenal point. If you've seen any of these, specifically talking about the United States Air Force, I think this is what General Goldfein is talking about.
Exactly.
When he says, hey, if this doesn't make sense, do what's right. Talk to your leadership, funnel up the chains. Just if you need to violate this because it's the right answer, it could be the right answer.
Exactly.
So the transition from enlisted to officer. So how has that played out for you?
It's been interesting. I'll say going from a tech sergeant one day to a second lieutenant the next was difficult. I got put into headquarters PACAF immediately, and I had 3 staff sergeants, amazing staff sergeants that worked for me. However, I was just one of them the day prior. So it was a little bit of a difficult thing figuring out where your leadership and then your peers are, because they're no longer my peers. So it was a bit of a challenge, but I think the biggest thing along the same lines with the AFIs is when I was enlisted, all my guidance was black and white. So I read it in the AFI, read it in the regulation, AFNet op, whatever, because I was comm. That was black and white. So then as an officer, I realized it's kind of gray. And that's my job. So when my airmen bring me something that doesn't make sense, it's my job to say, okay, let's make some common sense here. And that's been the biggest, probably the biggest difference I've noticed.
I think if you go back and watch the interview that I did with the ACC Command Chief, Chief Frank Batten, we kind of talked about that, where airmen are not empowered to operate with common sense.
Yeah.
We're not trying to cultivate a system of yes men and women, who just blindly apply rules. Because I think because you have to do so many things that are affecting people, like for a lot of bad stuff too.
Oh, yeah.
If people get hurt, injured, sick, you have to work, and just you help facilitate all those things. That I think the people do want the SME.
Yeah.
When they go there, they want the answer, but then they also want to know, hey, what is the human answer?
Right.
So what is? And so I'm kind of hesitant to ask some of these questions. So as I go through this, if we can kind of eliminate where you are now,
okay.
right? So just kind of take that out of it, because I want some honest feedback, but I think it'd be unprofessional for me to get you to kind of dish dirt on where you are right now. So absolutely not trying to do that. So anytime prior to right now, we'll just kind of go with that.
Okay.
So what do you think are some of the strengths and the leaders that you've seen with being able to find that gray area and apply the human context to some of our regulations?
We've had a huge culture shift, I would say, since General Goldfein and Chief Wright and Secretary Wilson came on board. That memo that came out about the additional duties. So that was something that I was challenged with when I was at headquarters PACAF, was to review all of our additional duties when they either eliminated or consolidated,
right,
and actually look at those. And that was the first time in the first measure I can remember that our leaders said, take that acceptable risk and actually do something about it. So if it's not right for your organization, change it. And understand why you're changing it. And if you can speak to that, you're good. And we'll have your back. And that's been an amazing experience to watch evolve over the last couple of years. I still think we have some middle leaders that are hesitant to do that. So, we're not a one mistake Air Force, but I've seen a lot of our, CGOs grow into FGOs and take on a rank, or even the enlisted, as the NCOs going into the senior NCO and chief roles, is they were never allowed to fail. And that's a problem. Because you have to fail or you're never going to learn. So if you have a commander, we have a lot of commanders who have been relieved of duty, and a lot of it is because people around them, either their top leadership or their airmen, never allowed it to fail. So no one ever got to see it. So the first time that they fail is at a high level, and it's not recoverable.
Right.
So that's something that I think our leadership is shifting and saying, hey, we are not a one and done. Make your mistakes early on. That's why we got rid of the A1C reports. That was a huge change. That's also the markings on the EPR now. People are allowed to make those mistakes and move forward and know that their leadership has their back and that they're going to defend them at the end of the day, and you can recover from this. And that, by far, is going to shape our Air Force for the future.
So kind of tying into that, and obviously this is a loaded question, is do you believe that just because somebody volunteered to serve in the military, that they are subject to whatever treatment that they get because they volunteered?
Well,
because a lot of people, if you join the military, then hey, you volunteered to put your life on the line and go, and you're in the military, and there's that military mindset. Is that can people just be treated as mindless drones? Like, hey, you're just here to wage war?
No, there's a human factor into it. on your Pachasa 8, you talk about the whole airman concept and how you hate it. And you want, it's more of you are a U.S. citizen and how, you should be thinking about what you're American.
Right.
What are we doing here for our folks? And that's something that, the Air Force, I guess, based on some of the other branches, the Air Force is more of a corporation. So that's kind of how we treat. We were talking about, NCOs in some of the other branches, and we empower our airmen at lower ranks. So I have 1 stripers, 2 stripers. Those are the folks that are leading some programs. That's not going to happen in the other branches.
You bet.
So, but we also have to take into consideration what people are bringing in.
You bet.
So their own backgrounds, their own beliefs. We have our core values, but how do they align it with their core values too?
So a lot of these young airmen that are coming are just those weak millennials.
No.
What do you say about that?
So I would say I've experienced some of those, but it's also you have to change your leadership style. You have to adapt to this because you're the old. We are the old in the Air Force now, which is crazy to say. I'm one of the oldest in my unit, which is very strange to me. But what motivated me 10, 15 years ago does not motivate my airmen now.
Right.
So I have to adapt. So I can figure out what matters to them. And if I can get that, they're going to work for me all day.
But that seems so classically unmilitaristic. How could you possibly say this? That you can just accept a human factor of people. This is not what we're trained in the military. Man, the military is hey, just follow orders. That's all you got to do. Don't ask why. Do as I say, not as I do.
So
you're not paid to have an opinion.
But there are times that that's necessary.
Yes.
And there's a distinction. And that's where when you're giving guidance or you're giving direction, you distinguish between those two. So there's going to be times where you can't ask this question and I need you to do it.
You bet.
And that's a direct order. So just go and do it. If I have time after the fact, I'll explain the rationale behind. But sometimes I'm not going to have that. And then there's the other flexibility that we have, that we can talk about it and bring their ideas in, because millennials have some amazing ideas. And they've come up in a generation where technology has always existed.
Yes.
And they know how to use it to their advantage and to our advantage if we allow them.
It's funny. So one of the recent interviews was with a mutual friend of ours, Chief Master Sergeant Retired Buddy Hutchison.
Yeah.
So he would ask his daughter, and so he goes into his daughter's room. She's got one headphone on, typing on the computer, has the phone up, doing all these things at once, to do this. And for all the people who complain about millennials, I just say piss off. It doesn't matter. I got called things wrong because are these the people who've never been told no? Yes. Are these the people? And I talk about this with Buddy. Is but they also know that there's always a yes to be found.
There is.
And they know how to find the
They're
yes.
inherently optimistic.
Yes.
And you don't want to squash that.
Right.
You don't want to ruin that.
And
I use, and you have to think about their terminology too. So we talk about communication and email. So I have a standard that within 48 hours, because that's our biggest complaint, is we don't communicate. My community, we're terrible communicators. It's just how it is. And we get a lot of email traffic and we get a lot of things. But the biggest complaint is because we don't respond. So, outbound assignments, we get somebody who may, have a question. Okay, their assignment counselor gets it in the org box, they don't answer for 3 to 4 days. So that person has no idea if it was received, if anybody's working on it. So my standard is within 48 hours, at least respond. You don't have to have the full 100% answer. You can have a 75, 80% answer and just say, hey, I'm working it.
You bet.
But I equate that to, okay, you get a text message and you send it and you see that they read it. Does that make you mad? Does that piss you off? Oh yeah, that pisses everybody off because you know that they saw it. That's the same thing that our customers are experiencing. And once you see the light bulb come on, they're like, oh, I didn't think about it that way. Yeah, that's why people are mad. You want to know why people are mad? That's why people are mad. Just respond.
And it's funny. So you brought up the Pachasa 8. You heard the Pachasa 8 years ago.
Yes.
As far as when we worked together in Fort Riley, Kansas. And step one in Pachasa 8 is communication.
Yes.
It is.
Oh, it's huge.
And again, just kind of your point. And again, the thing that I've talked about during my podcast here is just leadership at its smallest level, at the atomic level, at a bare minimum, is a communication between two or more people. And can we get that conversation right? Yeah. And can we talk about these things? Because if let's say you and Mark, your boyfriend Mark, or whatever, and he says, hey, I want to go out and drink with Chachi tonight. Is that cool? And you write back, sure, or sure exclamation point, or sure with a thumbs up, or and then an emoji. Yeah. 3 different communications.
Yeah. Or fine.
Or fine. Yeah, fine. Heaven forbid you fine. Right? No one's ever fine.
No.
But again, just getting some of that conversation right. So what do you focus on for your teams? And number one, I applaud your ability to say, hey, we're going to respond in some fashion within 48 hours. Because that's huge. So what are some of the things that you like to focus on as far as promoting communication, either A, within your team in the military personnel flight, or then B, just kind of in general within your squadron, or what you're trying to do base wide?
So I look a lot at our written communication. We understand it. So a lot of our programs are very in depth. I mean, we've got hundreds of AFIs, and the AFI quotes another AFI, and we understand it because that's our bread and butter. That's what we do. But when they're writing, they have to think from the user's perspective. So what's the user want to know? And sometimes you just have to be very, I wouldn't say generic, but you need to be a little more generalized and not so quoting AFIs or using acronyms or anything along those lines. So it's making it understood. It goes along the same lines as 1206s. So notoriously, personnel, we do this to ourselves, and we write 1206s that has shit tons of acronyms in it. That doesn't make sense to somebody who's not in our career field. So I just released our quarterly awards. 1206, I set this as fast, and I wrote them back, and I said, okay, use acronyms thoughtfully and make sure it makes sense, because this is what happens when a 1206 goes up and it doesn't make sense to another career field. It gets a 0.
Right.
So you want to know why we're not winning? That's why, because no one understands what we do, and we are not good at telling our story.
You bet.
And that's what we have to do on a daily basis, is tell our story and tell the folks that we're working for their story. So that's a lot of our communication, and also if it doesn't have to be an email, call. Email is effective, but not always effective. Pick up the phone, go visit the office, have that personal exchange. Right. Because in your Pachasa 8, you talk about how Hitch, and he talks about, nonverbals. Most of our communication is nonverbal, and you're not going to get that through an email.
You bet. So that's key. And again, if you send out an angry email, don't.
Not all caps.
Not all caps. And it's funny because I wrote down for one of my notes for a future podcast is email rules.
Yeah. Oh, email etiquette. Yes.
Right. And it's just one of those because I said everyone's got 20-pound balls on email, and you can just type it out and hit send until that person walks over like, hey, I read your email here. What did you? Oh, that's totally not what I meant. Like bullshit.
But
that's what you meant.
What it comes
don't cower. Right.
Tone comes across in emails. You have to be very careful. So if I'm sending an email that might be contentious, for one, I don't type mad. Don't ever type mad, because and you hit send, that's what it's going to come across. So take a moment, step away, come back and look at it, but also ask somebody. So I ask my superintendent a lot and say, hey, this could get heated. Can you take a look at it and make sure that what I'm stating is clear and lacks emotion? Right. Because that's not our job to be emotional with a lot of these things, but it's emotional to the person.
Amen.
So we have to remove our emotion from it.
So and that's huge, because at the very beginning of the interview you brought up passion. Yes. Right. So you want passionate people. We have passionate people who are passionate about obviously their lives and their careers with the job that they have to do. And sometimes an unfortunate but necessary byproduct of passion is going to be emotion. Yes. Like people are going to be human, and they're going to kind of lash out. So I definitely applaud your ability to kind of keep a lot of the emotion out of it as much as possible. And one of my rules, as we've hinted here, all email is read with hate, right? And that's it. I tell people, like, all email is read with hate. Yeah. You have kind, polite, teamwork enhancing emails are not randomly found in nature. Like you have to sit down and, like you're talking about, purposefully write them out. Yes. And there are times, and I did it when I was working at PACAF as well. I'm trying to type this email. I'm like, I called, person wasn't there. I'm like, shit. I tried to call again, or like do this, I'm like, I tried to type it a couple different, like there's no way I could type it without it sounding bad.
Yeah.
And so I just sent an email, like, hey, sir, would love to discuss this. I tried giving you a call, you weren't there. If you have a chance, please call me at blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah, blah.
I try not to put things like that. So if it's bad news, I don't put it in an email. I'll typically call if I can, or go visit the person first and then follow up, because you have to have that dialogue first. And if you just send it in an email, you have no idea what the recipient's gonna do with that at the end of the day.
Right.
And it's one of those, you gotta be conscious of your language that you use. So, per our last conversation, that means fuck you.
Right.
I mean, let's be honest here. Those are the things that.
That and or noted.
Oh, noted.
Noted means fuck you. Too.
Yeah.
If you ever write noted, please stop.
Yeah, don't do that. But those are the things, and I also jokingly, but said put a little smiley face in there.
Right.
Like, if this is a person that you work with on a regular basis and you already have a relationship with them, it doesn't hurt to put a little emoji in there, and that goes back to the millennials. That's it's like hieroglyphics to them. This is how they communicate. That's what they do. So it just helps. It helps cross those barriers.
And it just comes down to the understanding of, because email is not a form of communication to me. It is an aid to communication.
It's a documented communication. Yes, it's to aid us with a record. That's basically what it is.
Right.
It's our way of.
And now someone's going to hold you accountable for what your actions were on email.
Yes. Oh, and don't put anything in there that you're not going to do.
You bet.
Because they'll pull it up. Look, I keep all my PSTs. I've got everything from when I was an airman. So.
Yep.
I'll be like, oh yeah, you said that. Mm-hmm.
I've saved all of that. And it's funny. So you brought up the Pachasa 8 twice.
Yes.
And but it's funny because you have helped amplify and modify my Pachasa 8. So the Pachasa 8 has been constant for the most part. A few changes, but then after that, I have about 20 or 25 rules that kind of come along with it. One of it is all emails read with hate. Assumptions is the mother of all screw ups. Like all these, and again, this is like nobody bats 1,000. Is like you were saying, one of my rules is like, I need you to make mistakes.
Yes.
Failing helps you grow.
Yep.
And at a bare minimum, it teaches you how you deal with adversity.
Mm-hmm.
Like even if you may not learn anything from that lesson per se, it kind of teaches you who you are and what you're made of.
Right.
Like can you struggle through this and find success at the end of it? But you are personally responsible for adding 2 of those lessons to my rules. And so let's talk a little bit about triage and the 85%.
Yeah. So most of you know everything's a priority. So Bob, I got 5 bosses, right? So that's happens a lot. Everything's a priority, but if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. So you're never gonna reach 100%. That's just in the nature. If you can, bravo, but it's not something I've ever been able to achieve. So operate at a realistic expectation. And I know you talk about expectations a lot too, but you should operate at 85%. So if you're achieving 85% every day, you're good.
Right.
You're good. And it's going to vary, and some days you're going to do 110%, and some days you're going to do 55%. But if you go in with a realistic expectation of performing at 85%, you're achieving your life's work.
Right. And maybe you go in that day and you give your best that day. Mm-hmm. And maybe that day your best wasn't enough.
Right.
Like that happens too.
Happens all the time.
Right? You're like you're doing your very best, and you're probably gonna get like Mike Tyson says, is everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Right. So you may have a plan for that day. You may get punched in the mouth. I'm like, well, shit.
That the whole day.
Well, did that just change my day for me? But it's one of those to where go to that 85%. Like there's nothing wrong with that. And I think for your expectations, if I'm working for Captain Voirol, is I think you're going to understand that I'm going to have gaps. Mm-hmm. Another thing that I use by this 85%, I call it unexpected non-experience.
Yes.
And so the thing like that is when I went for my first command chief job, I had told the wing commander during my interview when he was hiring me, I said, hey, because we only had an ops group and a maintenance group, and we were air mobility command, so we had C-17s and KC-10s. Mm-hmm. So I said, hey sir, if I'm in contention for this job, I just need to be honest. Obviously, I'm not a career enlisted aviator. Yeah. I'm not a maintainer. I'm not a port dog working in the airport, and I've never been in air mobility command. So these are 4 great reasons not to hire me. I was like, but I told him like these are the best reasons to hire me because I'm coming in with no preconceived notions. I have no scar tissue. I have no judgment. I'm gonna see everything at face value, and I can point out the ugly babies because I don't know who the parents are. Like I just can be very honest. Like that is in fact an ugly baby. Squad grab like, well, that's actually my baby. So you need to cute up that baby really quickly.
Put a bow on it.
Yeah, but it's something, right? It's like, yeah, just bad. And so, but the one thing that I didn't tell him was that, or the one thing that I didn't have the context to understand was, I'd never been in a wing.
Right.
And I didn't realize how dumb that made me on so many levels. Because I remember I showed up there, and like 2 months later, just like we kind of went through here, E8 results came out. And somebody wrote it, they're like, Chief, who does the E8 party? I'm like, shit, the squadron?
Right.
Well, the wing nobody does something. Who's doing that? Was it the top three? Is it the Chiefs group? Is it the first sergeant? like I honestly had no idea.
Yeah.
It's just I had some of that unexpected non-experience to where hey, maybe that was my 85%.
Yeah.
You know, as part of it is that you could say, well, I would expect a captain to have dealt with A, B, and C. You're like, well, I've dealt with A and B,
but not C.
but I didn't do C. I was working at PACAF protocol, working for a 4-star.
Right.
You know, so you had so much time in protocol that maybe that took you away from some of the stuff that you might have learned as a lieutenant, and it's not bad. It's just life.
Yeah.
You know, and so understanding that, and again, I've got 5 bosses, Bob. You know, triage is just like you said. If everything is important, nothing's important. And if I'm your chief working for you, what may be super important to me right now may not be super important to you right now, based off of what the commander has given you to do. And now we need to have that conversation. Like, hey, Chief, I get it. I get that this is important to you, but there's 2 or 3 other chiefs that I'm working with, and we have other stuff going on.
Yeah.
This is the number 1 thing in your world. It's the number 4 thing in mine.
But go back and ask.
Right.
So that's the other thing. I think we do a terrible job of, we get a task, because task saturated, that's kind of the nature of what we do, but ask a realistic timeline on this. So if my boss gives me something, ma'am, do you need an answer today? Like, what is this priority for you? Is it a today priority? Is it a tomorrow priority? Is it a week from now? Ask the question.
You bet.
Don't be afraid to ask that question, because that way you're not out there lingering, panicking, thinking, I gotta do this today, and they may have really expected it 2 weeks from now.
Sure.
And then you can kind of prioritize or triage based off of that. And we did this really good. So OTS, you had asked me about going from enlisted to officer. OTS was probably one of the best leadership courses I've been through. Granted, I haven't been through a lot, but I've done a couple training sessions, and of course went through ALS. But OTS was a leadership laboratory. So every lesson, down to our quote of the day, built on the lessons that we were doing throughout, and they built as we progressed through the course. So you were involved in your flight, then you get involved in your squadron, and you go out into the OT wing. But one of the labs that we did, or the exercises, was your boss's inbox. So you get to a new duty station, and your boss is like, so glad you're here. I need you to manage my inbox. Here you go. And you got things like an email from the vice wing commander asking you to go play racquetball. And then you've got, this 4-star asking for this, or this airman who is has a family emergency. But which one do you answer first? So to me, when I did that, my first thing that I thought about was, what can I answer right away? So let me scan it. What is going to be my quick, I can take 15 minutes, knock these all out. And then I think, okay, what has to be done today? And go through those. And at the end, I didn't answer the vice commander, right? So my instructor was like, you didn't answer the vice wing commander. Why would that be your first one? I was like, you asked me to play racquetball. Like, racquetball is not a priority to me. He said, well, what you didn't know is the backstory on that. He wanted to hire you for a position. And that was your way to kind of do an interview before an interview. We don't think about those kind of things. So you talk about triage, like that wasn't a priority of mine, but maybe it should have. And if I would have asked the question, or just respond and say, sir, I'm really busy right now, I probably would have got more backstory on it.
Yeah, so that's fair, and I kind of appreciate that. However, like the wing commanders that I work for, would not have played those games.
Oh,
you know what I mean? So
obviously, right?
leave
Because it's just but it's a conversation. So that's
bet.
what it got us thinking about. Because some people did, they're like, oh, I gotta answer the vice wing commander. Let me make sure. But then Airman so and so who had a family emergency, he didn't get to go home because we didn't answer his.
Right.
So there's really not a right answer in that. And it was funny because this actually happened to me. So when I got to PACAF, that's what I was given, and that's what I had to do is triage those. And I appreciated that I got that kind of exposure at OTS prior to going there.
Nice.
But that does happen. It
You
happens
bet.
a lot, and you have to triage, and you have to think about, okay, what's going to get me fired today?
Right.
Those are the big things. It's like what's going to get me fired? What can kind of like smolder? And we might have a little bit of time before we got to put the fire out, but you got to think about it.
That kind of brings up a different, but I think kind of correlating concept is that if your boss gives you a task, people can view that in I think two different ways. Like maybe it's just like this ungodly task. You're like, oh, I'm ill prepared for this, right? And maybe you had just gotten in trouble for something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Name it, whatever, right? And all of a sudden you get this just daunting, monumental task. The thing that I like about this is that the only difference between a boss giving you this task, because you could probably like, oh my gosh, are they setting me up for failure? Like, are they giving me enough rope to hang myself with, or are they giving me an opportunity?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the only difference in those two things is whatever your boss's intent is.
Yeah.
But your boss may or may not communicate that.
No.
And they may just want to see kind of what you're made of.
Yeah.
And are you going to rise to the occasion, or are you going to take that bus to negative town and just get all pissed off and start sulking about it?
And that's a reflection of you, not them.
Absolutely. And they're just giving you the opportunity. And again, inherently, what they want to see where you're going to take this, mm-hmm. and what kind of person you are, and how you're going to react to a negative stimuli or a stressful stimuli here and there. So with that, we'll take that into our first break. So we'll kind of reset, refuel, and we'll get you back here quickly on the Cape Lee Revolution. Welcome back to this edition of Leaders with Leaders on the Cape Lee Revolution with Captain Katie Voirol. Captain Voirol, so we kind of talked about it a little bit. You became an officer, mm-hmm. went right to Hawaii.
Yes.
You worked at the Force Support Squadron there at Hickam for just a handful of days.
I never actually worked there.
So you showed up there.
I signed in, went on my house hunting, and got a phone call and said, you're going to headquarters PACAF. We have a master sergeant who's PCSing, and we don't have a replacement, but you were prior-enlisted, so here you go.
Nice.
All right.
Ah, fair enough. So then you worked in the CCQ, the orderly room, kind of front office for all of headquarters PACAF, yes. which was huge. Then after doing that for about 6 months, mm-hmm. you got picked up to go work at PACAF Protocol Office.
Yes.
I'm going to let you explain what PACAF Protocol was, and everything that you got to do and experience during that time as a butterbar.
Oh yeah, Protocol was amazing. It was such a unique experience, especially at that level, being so young in rank. And we had the premier team, and we still joke about it. And people talk about. Buddy even said it last night. He's like, "That's the best protocol office," and it's because we really enjoy what we did, and we had such a great team dynamic. But when you hear protocol, you think ceremonies. Right. So that's primarily what we did. But our protocol office had conferences, the Hickam flight line, had all of the DV visits. So I'm talking foreign dignitaries, senators, the president. Just anything that would come in, and then also all the ceremonies. So we had all the promotions, all the retirements, every change of command. Oh my goodness, change of command. I went through 2 of those. I have a little bit of scars from those days.
Oh, we'll talk about scar tissue here in a minute.
Yeah,
so.
But so the officers, we were in the DV flight, is what they called it. So we handled all visits that came in. We worked a lot with our international affairs guys, the A5I. Love them. Fantastic desk officers, people who are going to achieve great things. Exactly. And the policies and how they were shifting and interpreting influences how we do. I think even the national defense strategy is influenced by that. So it was pretty amazing. But we got to sit I had so John Carlisle was the PACAF commander when I was a protocol officer, and of course John Robinson came in afterwards, and both of them were dynamic leaders, different styles of leadership in the way that they approached, but how they engaged. So we always joke that John Carlisle kind of set the tone for partnerships, because that was our big thing. It was the pivot to the Pacific.
Yep.
And building partnerships. That was our goals and our mission at the time for the entire PACAF region. He built the foundation, but General Robinson solidified those partnerships. That was her job. That's why they brought her in, and she was fantastic. But we got to sit on Surreys and sit in meetings and hear high-level discussions and just exchanges, between. We hosted all of the air chiefs. So an air chief is the CSAF equivalent for our country.
Okay.
So we had 2 conferences while I was there, bringing all of the air chiefs. But what was so interesting to me is that the generals are people, just normal people. So as a young airman and NCO, and we hold officers at this high esteem, which we should, because that's what they're there for. They're our leaders, but they're normal people, and how they interact with people is exactly the same as possibly you and I interact with people. And how the cheese is made, and that's how those things happen, is at those dinners and at those office calls, and on the Surrey. So, we would make sure that we had ample time on the Surrey where they could sit and have a conversation. So we would go to Schofield, and they would have a visit there, and then they would talk about it. Traumatic brain injury was something that a lot of people are interested in, and they would talk about how they recover and what they do. And we would sometimes take some of those practices and talk about it and do cross exchanges and do different things.
You bet.
So it was amazing. It was such a unique experience. My team, I had a couple NCOs, a master sergeant who's now a senior, Brandy Thomas, love her to death. Her and I were just deployed together, but we're a family. That's what it came out to. So it was difficult going as a second lieutenant into that role, and because you're basically in charge. Like, I'll tell you from a protocol perspective, your chief, your command chief, and your general officer are looking to you. They don't know where they're going. They don't have to. They're not supposed to. It's my job.
They're supposed to be in the moment, do what they need to do, and you're herding cats going through.
I learned a lot about nonverbals on giving those cues of, okay, it's time, and not being, hey, it's time to go. Yeah, but just interrupting in a pleasant way, and making it a smooth transition. So it really helped just how I interact with people too.
So with that is one of the things that's really hard to explain and or articulate is that, like, for me, it's one of those, like, if you really want to evaluate your value to an organization, or perhaps your understanding of leadership, just kind of ask yourself, what level of conversation are you invited to? Yeah. And so I can only imagine, like, so as a brand new officer, as a second lieutenant rolling into first lieutenant, what amazing conversation for you to have. So how has that shaped your career, or perhaps even now at Joint Base Langley Eustis, just having that perspective, hearing our senior leaders discuss stuff, how has that helped you shape and apply leadership concept or Air Force priorities at your level?
It allows me to fill in those gaps.
Nice.
So I have a prime example of this. So when we were at PACAF, we were talking about, a lot of weapons qual. So some of in Japan and Korea, they had a requirement for sea burning and all those training things to be accomplished prior to coming in, because they didn't have the capability or necessarily the resources to get everybody currency. So that's why it was so important. And we at the time were it wasn't just a fight tonight in Korea. Right. It was a fight tonight in the entire region. It was a contentious time to be in PACAF. And then I come to Langley, and my airmen, and I'll use outbound again, and they were like, I just don't understand, why this is so important, and we have to ensure. And I was like, well, let me fill in that gap for you. Let me explain it. And they said, "Oh, I didn't realize." I said, "Did you guys watch the news?" I said, "Do you not know? You don't know what's happening right now." I said that's something you have to expand your worldviews. And I think at the squadron level, we get so down in the trenches that we don't see the other side
Yes.
of why we do certain things. So that's definitely helped me fill those gaps for my airmen.
You know, and that kind of ties into so much that I talk about with perspective.
Yes.
You know, and I'm very fond of saying is that realistically, we have very few problems inside our organizations, United States Air Force or not. What we do have is a huge perspective gap.
Yes.
So you have a greater perspective than 99% of the captains in the United States Air Force, guaranteed, before I even start that. And so some of your airmen kind of like this are frustrated or they don't know what's going on. You have a much higher ability to be patient because I believe that perspective shapes patience.
Yes. Yeah.
And so you can be more patient with some of these things because you have a greater perspective. So what do you try and do, or what have you tried to done, perhaps either in this place or a different place, to help bridge that perspective gap between you and your airmen?
So, we talk about it. So that's one of those things that I try to communicate with my airmen as much as possible. And I actually found it kind of strange the other day. I was thinking about when I was an airman, did I see my flight commander? And I was like, I didn't. And if I did, it was usually a bad reason. So it was just one of the things. But because of the position I'm in and because I sit with my airmen in the same vicinity, I get to interact with them on a daily basis. So, and they also, I have an open door policy. So, if something just doesn't make sense to them, they know they can come and ask me. And I've built that confidence that I can help tell that story, create that story for them so they have a better understanding of why they're doing something. And that we go millennials, that's something because they've had all these resources, they've had technology at their fingertips, so they want to know the why. And if I can help with that why, that's what I'm there for.
See that, and that's huge. You even brought up open door policy, and in one of the recent interviews, somebody had told me, he's like, he goes, you know what? He goes, I don't have an open door policy. He said, I've got an open door obligation.
Yeah.
So it's not like, hey, you're invited to come into my office. He's like, no, this is your responsibility to come in and talk to me. Mm-hmm. Your responsibility to come in and share some of these pieces of information to help share some of that perspective of the differences that people can bring, whether you're a millennial. It's just very easy to say millennial. Yeah. Right? I don't give a shit about millennials because I'm fond of saying one of my bosses kept calling me Pepsi generation. Yeah. I don't know what the hell that meant. I just knew that he thought I was a young airman and I didn't know shit. But he wasn't interested in my opinion either.
Yeah.
It's like, we don't have to keep doing it this way. Like, we have technology. This is different. Our communication systems are better. We don't have to keep doing this. We can do something. No, shut up, Aaron. You're not paid for your opinion.
No, but that's a shift that we've gone to.
We've
gone to, and it's also so not just protocol. I think I've had some amazing leaders that I've got to, witness and emulate some of their characteristics. And one of the things that I always appreciate from a leader is the fact that they let me sit in those meetings. So, not just in PACAF protocol, that was a privilege to be able to do that, but when I was the PACAF A1 exec. So even though I was in my own career field, as an exec, you don't typically sit in certain meetings.
Right.
But because Colonel Boyd wanted me to learn and be exposed to those level of conversations, so that because she knew I was going to go to a squadron afterwards, that was the right fit for me. Right. We didn't know where, but that's where I should go. Natural progression. So she allowed me to sit into a lot of those just higher level conversations with squadron commanders, so that I had a perspective going in. So I might not have had FSS experience, but I had the conversations. And same thing when I went. When I just deployed as an exec, I was the MSG exec, and that was my first real exposure to contracting and LRS and CE and COM. I was COM, but COM now,
right? And
security forces. And once again, I asked, sir, do you mind if I sit in some of these meetings? Just so
fly on the wall.
Right. I'm not there to offer an opinion, but what I appreciated from Colonel Fajardo is he would ask me afterwards. Hey, what are your thoughts on this? And he wanted my honest opinion. Right or wrong, but he wanted that perspective, my perspective.
And then like he can figure it. He's like, well, shit. If you have that, maybe you have that opinion because you do or don't know something.
Right.
And then he's like, well, shit. Maybe I haven't told people that.
Yeah.
Like if you don't know this, maybe other people don't know this. And then absent this information, maybe you do have opinion A when really it should be opinion. Huge.
And the other thing we started doing is inviting an airman to sit in a staff meeting. Now it might be boring for them, but what that does is that airman, the exposure that they get, they take back and talk to their other airmen. So that word of mouth is always going to go. So for a CGO sitting in there, I would go and talk to my other CGOs, and they might be rumor mill with MXG, ops group, and they'd be like, oh, we're hearing this. And I'm like, wait, I just sat in a meeting and this is the conversation that they're having. So exposing your lower ranks to those conversations early on only helps you.
You bet.
In the grand scheme of things. And open door policy, my chief, my group chief while I was deployed, he said, how do you get work done? I said, well, what do you mean? He's like, you don't turn anybody away. He said, your door is always open. You're available to talk to whoever wants it. He's like, and that's here. So how do you get any work done in, your normal day-to-day job? So that is my job. So as a leader, it's not my job to always push paperwork or work taskings. I have folks. Delegation, people hoard so much stuff, delegate down, allow them to work those projects. But my job is to equip my folks. So at the end of the day, if that means I have an open door and I spend 80% of my day talking to people, then my job's done. 85%.
85%.
Tap
Right.
right into 85%.
So with that, I kind of want to talk about some mentors that you've had. So if you want to talk about, and you can bring up by name or not, the people who've taken a vested interest in your personal and professional growth, and then perhaps you don't have to go by name. Perhaps some people that were walls when they could have been doors for you.
So I mean, obviously you. That's something we talked about when you came back, because I didn't meet you until you came back from a deployment. And then we developed our bond from there, and then of course we both went to Hawaii, and I've always had you as an advocate for me, which I really appreciate. Even when it's my dumb lieutenant, questions or just not getting along with people, and you're like, really, why are you bringing me this?
Never. No.
But, so I've always admired the fact, and like you said, we're, it's a family now, and that's evolved from there. I had the privilege of retiring my first supervisor. He was actually my second supervisor, but we don't count the first because I didn't really care for her too much. But I had a group of tech sergeants that at my first duty station, even now, and they're all retired, but I can reach out to them at any point and ask them anything. When I look for a mentor, it's somebody that I want to emulate. That their skills and the way they treat people that's where I want to be. I think one of our Air Force balls, they talked about standing on the shoulders of heroes, and that's what I see you guys. You are the heroes that our next generation are going to stand on your shoulders and propel themselves even higher. And that's where I want to be. And I hope that in return, people see me as a mentor like that.
You bet.
I don't know what to do.
No, I mean, like I said, you've already altered my leadership philosophy and at least added to it. If not, I'm sorry, you didn't add it. You helped it evolve.
Yes.
So when you can help in anyone's natural evolution of something, I think that's always a win. What about some of the quote unquote losers?
Goodness. So my first supervisor, the one that we don't talk about, I had a really great experience with that one. So she just didn't get it, and I don't know if she just. I look back now and I wonder, did she just not get the mentorship that she needed, or the guidance that she needed, or did people just turn away from her? She issued me an LOC, my first and only LOC I've ever received in my nearly 16 years, for participating in we had a sports day for the base, and I was supposed to be on one team, and they had enough people, so the firefighters needed a female. Firefighters naturally won, and she gave me an LOC for not supporting my unit. Now, granted, she said it was a joke, but she gave it to me in a feedback session and didn't take it away from me for 4 days. So it was she was not my favorite person. But fast forward 10 years, and I get to Hickam, and I'm coming out of the food court with one of my airmen, and there she is. And it was the greatest experience because I saw the realization on her face that I now outrank her and that she has to salute me. And that was probably the best salute I've ever received in my entire life. And you know what she said to me? Looks like that LOC didn't hurt you. So, yeah. But in those 10 years, she also only gained 1 rank, and she retired. So, but what I look back on is, okay, what were the things that she did that I didn't like? And obviously I steered myself away from those, and there's probably some scar tissue. She wasn't available to talk. I didn't have my first feedback session until my eval was closing out. I worked shifts, she worked days.
Right.
She didn't make the time for me. So that's probably where, I make the time so that people can come in. I had a certain individual at Keister, we'll call him Scotty Too Hottie. He told me I would never commission. He said I wasn't up to snuff and that I wasn't officer material.
Was he an officer?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And the
Noted.
yeah. So in your face a little bit. So when he left, and Colonel Doug Short came in, and he was our commander at the 333rd. And I told him this story because he asked me, he was like, why are you not pursuing being an officer? And I was like, well, I was told, I'm just not quite, that's not my path. And he was like, are you kidding me? And he was livid. I was 1 class away from finishing my bachelor's degree, and he was calling universities to see if I could get into an ROTC program. That was the level, and I got the assignment to Fort Riley, and he actually called Colonel Wood and talked to him ahead of time and said, hey, Katie wants to commission, and she's coming to you, and obviously we have time on station requirements, but let's set her up for success, because this is a future leader that we need to set up for success. And Colonel Wood, ended up taking care of me in that capacity too.
You took care of you.
Okay.
And so and I mean that in all sincerity. And so there's a lot of people. So it's tough inside. There are a lot of people. Like if you're in a comm squadron, that's comm squad, right? If you're in FSS, you're that. But so many people work in someone else's squadron, right? So you're coming in as an outsider at Fort Riley to work in a TAC P squadron, and everyone's so afraid that they're not going to get a fair shake. That, oh my gosh, thankful attack piece, what was my career going to be like here to do that? But again, so you end up being one of those success stories, or even now, CMS Sergeant Eric Velasquez, he's my teammate, 3 successive assignments, to do that. And I've always loved him. I've loved his work ethic, and he's always gotten a fair shake, and he's promoted himself. And it's funny. So if you're out there and if you're worried about your lot in life, if you're the outsider inside one of these squadrons, just be awesome. Yeah. You're going to get recognized for awesomeness.
And I came in with the approach that this is the closest I'm going to get to the warfighter. I mean, let's be realistic. I was calm. We're not tip of the spear. That's just, we're not. Even FSS, we're not tip of the spear. Do we make tip of the spear work? Absolutely. You can't do it without us.
Right.
But that's the closest I was ever going to get. And whatever I could do for you guys to make sure that you got out the door and you didn't have to worry about stuff, that was me doing my job. At the end of the day.
You bet.
So whatever you asked me to do, that's what I was going to do. And people worry about themselves so much that they forget what they're there for.
That karma.
Yeah.
If you're just a good, like I say, you can be a good dude, the best compliments I can give are hey, he's a good dude, or she's an awesome chick.
Yeah.
If you can be that good dude or awesome chick, just focus on being awesome.
Yeah.
And let karma sort it out.
Everything else will fall into place.
Right.
Stop it. Oh my goodness, that's another thing about being switching over, is that when I was enlisted, everybody kind of propelled each other. So if I knew something good, I was going to tell you, because I wanted you to be good too.
Right.
And I've always had, and this is the competitive side of me, is if I'm going to beat you, I want to beat the best.
Right.
And if that means I have to equip you with the same level as me, I'm going to do that.
I want you at the top of your game.
I want you at the top of your game so that when we compete, we are at the top of our game.
You bet.
And it's the true. And from an officer, something early on is that didn't always happen. There was a lot of your own growth and what you knew you held on to.
Gotcha.
So I've tried to shift that with we've in my current unit we have a lot of officers and we try to talk about those. You know, what makes me better will make you better as a leader. So it's shifting the mindset once again.
That's it.
Yeah.
Teamwork, right?
Teamwork.
If we just focus on teamwork, it's gonna end up being huge. And so like as far as teamwork goes, you mentioned in the first half of the interview, or perhaps when we were on break, you were talking about people's ability to give a no.
Oh my goodness.
It just seems like people are just up there. A lot of people, not FSS specifically, but I know that mindset, that conjures up some
as a community.
Some myself just like they're like six shooters of no.
Yeah.
And so how prevalent is that, and what do you do to try and curb it?
So I have this flight expectations, and one of them is that I don't believe in no. And when my NCOs and my senior NCOs see that, and my fellow officers, and they're like, well, what do you mean you don't believe in no? No is the answer sometimes. It's like, I don't believe in a blanket no. So we should not automatically say no to something. And if I said no to the opportunities that came up, I wouldn't be where I'm at today at the end of the day. So, it's finding that yes. And when I say finding that yes, it might not be the yes that you were looking for in your situation, but it's finding that middle ground. So it's, well, we can't do this. However, we can do this.
Right.
And you still get a similar outcome.
Sure.
Because that's what it comes down to is what's the outcome that you're trying to achieve. And that's what our job should be. That's what anybody's job should be. You should not automatically go in with the approach of I'm going to say no to everything.
Right. And it's tough because I'm one of those people where I don't believe in no's. I believe in like don't tell me no, tell me yes if.
Yes. Yeah.
So if you can tell me yes if, like that answer is like can I do this? Yes if blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Until if happens, that answer is going to be a no. But the ball's now in your court to help make these ifs come to life. And so I've had similar frustrations, and it was weird when I was a command chief in the AOR, the passenger terminal put up a sign that said no sleeping, no bags. So I talked to one of the chiefs. I said that sign's coming down today. I cannot do that. And I said hey, like I'm letting you know, I can think of 5 distinct reasons why you would want to put that sign up there. And I don't fault them for putting the sign up. I absolutely don't. I was like, they found a yes, right? This was the yes for them, right? I was like, this was the wrong yes. Mm-hmm. Like there are wrong yeses here and there. I was like, so, and again, because like the passenger terminal was extremely crowded, so we had to look at overcrowding where people would sleep and they'd miss their call to go board for their plane to do that. So I actually get every reason why you would want to do that.
But once again, that goes back to that is an individual holding people accountable for their actions. And where's your troop commander? Where if this is a young airman, where is that NCO to help guide them? So, but you also you have a responsibility not to miss a movement, because let me tell you, that's an actionable item.
Check.
I think it's a UCMJ article. You can't miss a movement. So why is it the port guy's responsibility to do that? It's not. So I see, but it's still that's not on them to be responsible. So if somebody missed it, it's not on them. It's on that airman for missing it.
Yeah.
So you shouldn't have to put up a sign.
And again, it's about getting that conversation.
Yes.
And that's it. And again, and I told him he came back. He's like, Josh, you gotta understand. I was like, I don't have to understand. That sign's coming down.
And that's I don't have to explain my rationale. It's that military. This is you will do, versus having that conversation.
Right. And it's like in our first conversation, like I already told you, I was looking at it from their point of view, and I would understand at face value why they would want to do this. Mm-hmm. I totally get it. It is an easy yes, but it wasn't the right yes.
Right.
And so many people like hit and then the commercials. There's the easy button. I don't give a shit about the easy button. I care about the right button.
Yeah.
So people have those on their desks, and it's just as easy. I'm like, shit, I want those gone. I'll smash them. Keep them on. Like I don't care about the easy button.
Right.
Like we're not in this
Yeah.
for ease. But talk about the ease of military service. It has come to my attention that you are in fact a female,
Oh,
right?
surprise!
Woohoo! So you know, as far as your military service, and Friday was International Women's Day.
Mhm.
I know you went and saw Captain Marvel last night.
I did.
You know, so
Yes.
there's a lot of great pro women's sentiment going around, and I think internationally the tide is turning, and so I think men are becoming more aware. I think women are becoming more self-aware of whatever situation that they may find themselves in, or whatever culture may have been acceptable then that is no longer acceptable now. So as far as your time in the military, 16 years in the military, how has being a woman affected or not affected you, or what are your thoughts about how we've grown as an Air Force, as a society, anything like that?
So we talked about this a little bit on the break, but I've never experienced bias. In my first career field, predominantly male, going to an ASOS, one of 4, 5 females in the unit, but at no point was I treated differently. So personally, I've never experienced that. Does it happen? Absolutely. I have no doubt. But for me, I think I don't allow myself, and I'll call it victimization. I don't allow myself to think that just because I'm a girl I can't achieve something. So if there's something I want out there, I'm gonna go for it. And as long as I meet that standard. So we talk about women in combat. Don't lower the standard. Do women deserve to be there? Absolutely.
You bet.
But if they can meet the standard. And if you lower it, you're just undermining the entire program. And you're undermining their abilities. And you should never, ever, ever lower a standard at all.
You bet, and it's really funny. Is one of our mutual friends, Lieutenant Colonel Lisa Terrio. So she was the one who kind of taught me in PACAF, as much as I'm embarrassed to say it, was when she was teaching the PACAF Chiefs Leadership course. She's like, if you don't ask a woman, you lose out on 50% of the opinions out there.
Oh, absolutely.
And coming from a male-dominated career field, it's really only dudes in my squadron, and that's it. And so the then restrictions on combat service, right? So there's only dudes around it. I never thought to ask, and then I think if I did, it would have been hey, you don't have the perspective in which to answer this. You're not here. You're not trained for this to do those things. But in the years past that brief that Colonel Terrio gave, when I've asked female perspective or a female opinion, even though they may have had limited perspective on the topic, I always walked away with something different.
Yeah.
Like something that just a dude wouldn't inherently think about.
Right, and it's there's proven studies out there that talk about how males versus females and how we interpret data coming in,
right,
and our responses to those. But everybody brings something to the table. It's one of the I really like personality tests. True Colors is one of my absolute favorites, and it goes around with the same sentiment because I'm considered the gold green.
Okay.
Mark is a green orange. I'm more introverted, where he is extroverted.
I'm an orange blue. I'm an extroverted hugger.
Oh, I totally believe that. Blue is a color that's not really high on my scale. But at the end of the day, my approach is great for some situations,
right,
and others it's not. So I have to take a back seat and allow one of the other colors to come forward. And that's what True Colors teaches you, is where to emphasize on a certain one and how they fit into your organization. And it's the same thing with male, female, or different backgrounds growing up. I grew up incredibly poor. We didn't have a lot. I didn't know I didn't have a lot until I, got out of there, and I was like, oh, well, this is what the world is.
The whole world.
I was like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. But that's the perspective I bring to situations. So, you can't just dismiss somebody. Inclusion is what it comes down to. And I think the Air Force has gone to that inclusive nature. And we talk about that more. So it's not a male versus female. It's being inclusive to everybody and getting everybody's opinions at the end of the day. And, Amanda Pelkowski, I consider her one of my good friends and a mentor. She's in my career field, but she's one of those that's out there kicking ass every day, and she's a badass.
Absolutely. She's not going to be held down by anything.
And she's not going to be held down by anything. And she's breaking barriers and pushing the boundaries. And I think at the end of the day, that's what you want anybody to do, whether it's male or female. Jonah Robinson got asked that question when she was the PACAF commander about how does it feel to be the first female, commander of PACAF. And she said, well, I hope you're proud of me because I'm an airman. Hope you're proud of me because I'm your commander and a general officer. And oh, by the way, I just happen to be a female. So it's always looking at those qualifications and not the sex.
Fair. So I have to ask, what is next for Captain Katie Voirol? Like, where do you see yourself? Where do you want your career to go? Like in your wildest dreams, what would you want to see happen for you?
Oh, I want to be a commander.
Nice.
That's one of the things. So when I decided to commission, I had always been in either one-man deep slots or or the lowest ranking. So in my opinion, I was never in a leadership position. Fast forward to commissioning, and it exposed me to. I in fact had been a leader in my organizations prior, but I didn't realize it because it wasn't a traditional role. But at the end of the day, being a commander is my goal. I want to lead airmen. I will take the problems. I love that because you help find solutions. That's one of on my flight expectations. One of my lines on there is "Don't bring me problems, bring me solutions." I'll listen to your problems all day long, but if you don't bring me a solution, I'm going to make the decision for you.
Right. And it's so much better for you to shape the conversation.
Yeah. So that's something that is great about being a leader, because you're not necessarily an owner of a program, but you get to shape and guide folks and turn them into those future leaders, and that's what I want to do. Hopefully, we'll see.
There's no better way to end an interview with that. And so as I tend to normally do is just bring this around to my concept of CAPE, caring, alignment, perspective, and expectations. And I think you just summed it up right there in your desire to be a commander. You care about the people. You want to help shape conversations and help them align themselves. You're going to get people's input to get different perspectives. And then lastly, you're going to lead solid expectations, good, realistic expectations for your people, for the success of your unit. So for that, as always, I applaud you. I love you as a family member and teammate. So Captain Voirol, thank you very much for being on the podcast, and cheers. And we'll catch you next time on Leaders with Leaders.